Hey, what is going on, YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day here. And guys, we have an absolute banger for you guys here in today's video. We are, of course, back in the Hindi here. And in our initial first look video, we ran an AP focus build with Augustin Riegerwald there. And, of course, Arthas with the plane trying to get max damage AP salvos. And a few people in the comments said, why don't you use the HE more? And, well, I did use the HE a good bit, but I didn't want to relinquish this ship to simply being an HE spammer. However, with this particular build, we are running more of an HE focus build, and this thing is absolutely disgusting. This ship is just amazing overall, but this game definitely highlights how strong the HE can be as well. Now, part of the reason that I tend to go with the AP focus build is the HE by itself is still incredible, so you don't really need to spec into it to get the most results. I'd rather have really good AP on top of pretty decent HE instead of just better HE. Now, both the AP and the HE on this ship are good sort of regardless, but alas, I would rather have that little extra damage and just getting those insane chunky dev strikes with AP from 203mm guns is just, I don't know, that's what keeps me going. But as we mentioned, though, this was one of those games where we got a few paid actors, and this Zeitan here is one of them, a tier 7 in a legendary tier lobby. And I actually think our team had an Iowa as well. So this was just one of those games where if you have posable thumbs, you probably could have got 200k with this ship. But yeah, this is one of those crazy games that really highlights how strong this ship can be. Once again, we are on mountain range here on the center spawn. I believe we were on the exact same spawn and side for our Ohio video and used the exact same island. But this little position here, as you can see, we had a few salvos come our direction for about 5,000 worth of damage. Sort of protects us from getting cross-torped, cross-fired, and allows us to use a little bit of concealment if, of course, we were to stop shooting and a destroyer did not push up, you know, within our detection range. So again, these games will come, it's less about the ship and the commander and more about your positioning than anything else in this game. Now, of course, this ship is pretty disgusting on its own, even with a quote-unquote free-to-play commander, and I did think we had one non-free-to-play inspiration, but the point remains, positioning is far more important than any other factor in this game. But with that quick elimination there, we have got about 30,000 damage and 1 kill, with a few defends early on in this game. And with our refill station active, we are actually able to lob ships at a pretty significant range here. Now, I don't absolutely love refill station as much as I used to. However, we are running the Hindenburg, and I was trying to damage farm and get a nice little round 300k. And while we didn't quite achieve that, this game sort of highlights why DPM can be so influential in the game. And to bounce a small little counterpoint, I guess, off of that, and one we made in our Ohio video, while damage is certainly important and usually what ends up winning games most of the time, it is not the end-all be-all factor. So if you want to run speed builds, agility, concealment, different types of builds to, you know, of course for different ships, by all means go and do so. But to claim that they are, you know, the most effective or whatever, it really comes down to the ship, the captain, and the situation. And in a situation like this, damage is really what won this game right here. I do have to give a huge shout out to the failed division in front of me, this Minnesota and Massachusetts, because they did actually attract a lot of the damage away from me. You can see that Delaware shot them and ended up, you know, giving a citadel to that Massachusetts, who was once again in a legendary tier lobby. So you can only just sit there and laugh. But here we are angling away from that Delaware. And I popped my plane here because I was like, did I put Arthas on? I wasn't quite sure, but no, we did not have him on there. But regardless, that Delaware didn't put out a single fire, so we're going to try to continually spam him and line him up for the permanent fire, and there it is. And there it goes as we add a double fire, and I'm not sure if it was we added a triple fire or just added a double fire to our single fire to give it a triple fire in the moment. But on top of that and that insane tick rate of damage, you can see that we are still getting penetrations, 9 pens there of HE at 16.8 kilometers. So while the AP build is certainly effective and fun, as you guys can see, the HE build is equally devastating. It was at this point in the game where we have about 100,000 damage, an arsonist, and 2 kills there where I realized, yeah, this game could be pretty spicy here. There is a good bit of meat left on the bone here. 4 battleships, 2 cruisers, and a destroyer. Now the bad news is we don't have the cap control. However, I have utilized my health pretty well, and we actually don't really get targeted in this game all that often. You can see that those battleships are still focused on the other battleships to the southeast there on the south side of the sea. So we're just going to sit here and farm. I was thinking about pushing in, but considering that's a Scharnhorst 43, and yes, that is a tier 7 battleship again in a legendary tier lobby. But he does have torpedoes, or at least he did until we broke him there with our HE. But you couple that with an Awami being essentially full health, and this position here can gain us all the advantages that we really need in order to help win this engagement and furthermore win this game. There is an argument to be made that I played this a little bit too passive. However, we were close-ish to the cap, and as you can see, our team has a good flank over there on that Charlie side. However, if I played it maybe a touch more aggressive, we certainly could have gotten even more damage. I think this game was just enough in terms of damage, though, as we are now sitting with our 3rd kill with 15% extra shell damage on that Awami there. So on top of getting penetrations, we are also getting fires with this particular build. And yeah, this is just going to be a nightmare situation to be in against a Hindenburg. Medium range here when the player knows how to angle. However, as we mentioned earlier, they weren't really focusing me. So if you don't want to be farmed by this ship, well, you're going to need to shoot at it, as is the case with 99% of the other cruisers in this game. Here's a good example of how to sometimes maximize your damage output, rather. We have this Awami on fire here as we tick the high caliber, but we could see that he was turning. So we're going to go ahead and load the AP while that fire is still ticking, and we actually managed another fire with that finishing salvo of HE there. But if you lead it correctly, yeah, a few pens there, you will get further penetrations, as sometimes you can saturate ships with the HE. So after those first few salvos on the same region, you will not be getting any further damage. More examples of appropriate ammo selection here. We decided to keep the AP loaded as I thought that Des Moines was going to turn broadside. However, he smartly angles to us, but we just go ahead and swap back to the HE, which has incredible pen. And despite a little bit of trolley RNG there in the shells landing outside of his boat, we're going to connect, 8 pens there, go ahead and switch to the AP. As he turns out, he doesn't really have a choice. He put himself in not really a favorable spot. And there is our 4th elimination with 193,000 damage there. You guys often hear me talk about plus and minus plays, and in this particular situation, not going towards the Bravo cap is honestly a minus play. Now we are up on points and we actually do have a battleship in that cap, but hypothetically if we lose those 2 battleships or a trade over there on Charlie and the destroyer manages to get the elimination at Bravo and get the cap, we're not sitting in a favorable position. However, seeing that I was so close to 200k and this Yamato has a good bit of health left, I wanted to farm him. So we do maintain close proximity to this Bravo cap, but objectively the better play would have been to go dark, pending on where that destroyer is spotting us and turning into the cap. I do want to note, however, that the Hindenburg, of course, does have access to the German sonar as well, so even if this destroyer were to come back and get a few kills, we could potentially push him out of the cap and defend the cap if necessary. So not the absolute worst, minus play, but again, we see often in situations and in close games where people will shoot their guns with 2,000 health trying to get an extra 2,000 damage instead of, remaining dark or, getting the cap or what have you. Coincidentally enough, we actually don't even manage to connect the permanent fire on the Yamato, and he goes behind this island here. So what probably could have, been 10 or 20 more K, we end up missing out on. Hopefully you noticed that Holland on the north side of Bravo here, and that's actually what we're headed towards, and that is, of course, when the Yamato becomes detected here behind that island. We have the AP loaded, and despite getting a decent shot off, we actually don't manage to connect, the ideal salvo. 3 pens, 5 overpens, and 1 shatter there, but that was still about 10K with a few more, or just 1 rather, penetration to follow it up, but that does actually tick us the Confederate. And of course, you should see that the Holland turned south there behind that rock, and he is now in the Bravo cap. We decide to shoot here just simply to get spotted. We have basically all of our health, and we just want this Yamato to shoot. He does. We break, we turn out, and even if he connects potentially 2 citadels, we would still be okay. But of course, by adjusting your throttle and your rudder ever so slightly, all of those shells missed. We throw a salvo of HE, which actually gets us a fire. We, of course, loaded the AP because he is still broadside. It doesn't matter, that fire was enough to take our 5th kill for the Kraken Unleashed. That, and we now have ourselves a Holland in this Bravo cap here. We do become detected here, so we know that he is directly in front of us. He's trying to get torpedoes off. Honestly, in a situation like this, there's not much this Holland could do. The Holland did have a pretty decent score, and he did what he could for his team. His team just didn't back him up in that regard. We pop our sonar here to get a little bit better view of these torpedoes heading towards us. I honestly wanted to try and take one to get a little bit more XP in terms of attracted damage, but we were not quick enough to adjust. So now we're just waiting, hoping that this Holland does come within view. And right on cue, there he is, off to our right side. I'm not sure if he was trying to get torpedoes off, but he's basically said, hey man, I know that this game is over. Enjoy your kill. He does actually connect the high caliber, so like I said, the Holland did put in a good amount of effort, but there is just the mass chunk damage that this HE can do. And with this final salvo here, we manage ourselves a beautiful little 6-pack in the Hindenburg. I'm going to be honest, I thought we would have gotten a little more XP, 3578 there with 6 kills, a high caliber Confederate Kraken, Arsonist, and of course First Blood, but missing out on that cap and potentially other defend ribbons a little bit throughout this game. And of course plain XP is the one that just really boosts your score without doing much, is probably what held us back a little bit there. But a fantastic game, 239,000 damage there, and just a perfect emphasis of how strong this ship is, period. But as we mentioned, we are running more of an HE build with Mr. Karl von Mueller here, with Burn It Down and Igniter, sort of giving us that little extra fire chance, as well as Haguro as an inspiration. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't exactly sure what to place as my second slot there, but yeah, so not quite a full free-to-play build as we mentioned earlier. But that is the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a fantastic Monday. It should be when I release this video. Yeah, we had a great trip this weekend. So yeah, we'll see you guys potentially tonight on stream, maybe sometime during the week. I don't know. Love you guys. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.